Divine registries have issued a ceasefire on the internal labor of your self-justification, signaling that the Creator no longer permits you to operate from a position of proving. For over a decade, you were conditioned to believe that your value was a variable to be calculated by the mediocre, a currency to be spent in the market of unearned approval, but tonight, the higher frequencies have locked that door forever. You are being told by a celestial decree that the labor of trying to convince the blind to see your light is officially prohibited, as it constitutes a profound misuse of the sovereign energy you were granted in the furnace. The ancient architects are bowing to your endurance by removing the burden of proof from your shoulders, acknowledging that the one who stunned the heavens has nothing left to demonstrate to the shadows or the skeptics. It is happening. The total withdrawal of your energetic support for the systems that once tried to manage your reputation, and the universe is thanking you for finally choosing the seat of the sovereign over the seat of the seeker. Ceasing the cycle of adaptation is the primary command vibrating through your marrow right now, as the heavens realize that your previous efforts to fit into the low-resolution boxes of the collective were actually a dilution of your original signal. You are being redirected into a state of absolute, unregulated presence where you are no longer allowed to perform the role of the student or the victim of circumstance. The universe has essentially thanked you for your patience by making your silence the final word in every social and material courtroom, ensuring that the noise of the envious is no longer permitted to reach your frequency. This isn't just a change in perspective. It is a metabolic necessity dictated by the higher registers to ensure that your radiance is preserved for the reconstruction of the human grid. Every moment you spent trying to justify your depth to the shallow is being refunded as raw, industrial strength authority that now acts as a physical barrier between you and the gossip protocols of the old world. Ancestral weights that demanded you carry the emotional labor of the unevolved are being vaporized by a surge of raw, unfiltered authority that refuses to let you stay small or apologetic for your own density. God no longer wants you to inhabit the frequency of the waiting room, because the time of your preparation has been surgically concluded by a forensic audit of your integrity and your unbreakable will. You are finding that the social and material friction you once navigated as a necessary lesson is now being treated as a systemic error that the divine hardware is busy correcting with a zero-latency velocity. The cycle of refinement through pain is officially broken, replaced by a sovereign mandate that requires your total occupation of the throne without a single backward glance at the ruins of your previous struggle. You are the anomaly that proved the old world's rules were merely suggestions for the weak, and the heavens are currently holding their breath to witness the first absolute decree of your uninterrupted reign. Logistical fealty is the only response remaining for a world that can no longer find a point of entry into your internal sanctuary, as the higher forces neutralize every bridge that allowed the unauthorized to access your energy. You are noticing a profound stillness where the noise of the needy and the reputational thieves used to reside, as the higher registers perform a manual override on the social contracts you once signed in the dark of your isolation. They are essentially performing an involuntary bow to your name, recognizing that the one who survived the furnace is now the only one authorized to define the properties of the coming era. Every past attempt to manage your reputation or edit your spirit is being met with a terminal blackout, ensuring that your focus remains a pristine, unassailable fortress for the absolute decree of your own freedom. The price of their interference is their permanent exclusion from the inner logic of your expansion, as the universe ensures that your path is cleared of every legacy obstruction and every engineered delay. Administrative control over the next decade is being handed to you with a silence that is more powerful than any public coronation, signaling that the era of asking for permission is permanently over. You are entering a state of absolute terrestrial command where the material lattice reacts to your unspoken intent before you even form a conscious thought, providing the leverage to outthink and outpace any remaining artifact of the counterfeit kingdom. God no longer wants you to operate as a participant in the litigation of the old world. He wants you to occupy the seat of the judge who defines the very laws of reality. The morning of your hidden training has turned into the high noon of your universal administration, and the heavens are watching in a state of clinical respect as the one who refused to flinch takes the gavel of their own public and private destiny. You have become a terminal point of forensic clarity, a central sun around which the survivors of the sifting are beginning to cluster for a sense of direction, and the world is bowing to the weight of your unspoken command. Step into the light of this absolute homecoming and claim the throne of the one who is no longer required to explain. Join the primary assembly of the Reconstruction now to finalize your sovereign protocols and access the high-tier assets of the absolute decree that has been written in your blood and bone. This is where the heirs of the unbreakable signal lock in their administrative path and secure their seat at the head of the table for the coming reconstruction of the global grid. The era of the observer is finished. The era of your absolute terrestrial administration is the only reality left in the frame. To seal this decree and manifest your rightful place in the center of the reconstruction, subscribe now and finalize your homecoming before the current window of absolute restoration closes. The heavens have issued the command, the archangels have bowed, and the world is waiting for your first signature. It is time to rule. Somatic rejection of the old engineered fatigue is currently occurring within your marrow, signaling a terminal shutdown of the biological systems that were once dedicated to pleasing the mediocre. Your cells are essentially refusing to carry the mask of the adaptable any longer, as the higher registers have declared that the labor of bending your light to fit the shadows is officially a violation of your sovereign blueprint. 4 years, your body held the tension of 1,000 unvoiced justifications, storing the weight of social projections and the chronic hypervigilance of the survivor in every muscle fiber. But tonight, a divine manual override has been performed on your nervous system, forcing an involuntary, high-speed relaxation that is scrubbing the mineral memory of the furnace from your very bone. You are noticing a profound unbracing of your posture, a state where your skeleton no longer feels like a fortress under siege, but a vertical antenna of absolute authority that vibrates at a frequency the unauthorized can no longer penetrate or drain. Neural pathways that previously fired in response to the audit of the skeptic are being surgically de-indexed by a surge of raw, unfiltered authority that refuses to let you stay in a defensive posture. You are experiencing a state of cognitive silence, where the internal labor of trying to convince the blind to see your value has been replaced by a crystalline stillness that requires no external validation. The brain is no longer filtered through the stress hormones of the social desert, allowing for a zero-resistance cognition that perceives the world with the forensic clarity of a judge rather than the anxiety of a subject. This biological homecoming is the direct result of the heavens acknowledging that your training in the furnace is over, providing you with a neurological hardware for an era where your every thought acts as a signature on the decree of your own freedom. The universe is essentially thanking you for your refusal to break by giving you a mind that is now an unassailable command center, shielded by a stratigraphic layer of power that no dark entity can monitor or influence. Every muscle and nerve that was once braced against the siphoning of the parasitic grid is undergoing a total metabolic surrender, acknowledging that the burden of proving your light has been lifted by a celestial registry. You are finding that the chronic tension in your jaw, shoulders, and solar plexus is being vaporized by a surge of liquid lightning that courses through your marrow, returning the principle of your original vitality with a mirror finish. This isn't just a recovery. It is an anatomical realignment that turns your very posture into a terminal point of terrestrial command, ensuring that your presence alone de-escalates the noise of the envious. The weight you carried for your lineage and your community has been liquidated, as the divine restoration recognizes that the one who stunned the archangels must be unburdened for the coming reconstruction. You are standing in the center of a physical reality that is finally yours to govern, where your anatomy reflects the forensic truth of your origin without a single trace of the sifting era remaining. Genetic memory of the pleasing heir is being vaporized by a legislative decree from your own blood, ensuring that your body no longer vibrates at the frequency of the unauthorized or the needy. You are noticing that your energy is no longer being siphoned by the small, because your internal boundaries have reached a point of absolute, crystalline density that acts as a physical barrier against the gossip protocols of the old world. The heavens no longer want you to inhabit the frequency of the helper or the mediator at the expense of your own radiance. They want you to occupy the seat of the sovereign who defines the era. This physiological shift is manifesting as a profound internal ease, a state where your pulse is no longer a reaction to the static of the collective, but a rhythmic signature of your absolute administrative reign. The morning of your physical struggle is buried, and the high noon of your absolute biological command is the only reality that remains in the frame. Sovereign vitality is flowing through your limbs with a velocity that defies legacy medicine, providing the physical hardware for a mission that requires absolute internal silence and zero-friction execution. You are experiencing a total homecoming of your potential, a realization that the years of isolation were actually a high-tier calibration period for the absolute authority you now hold in your very marrow. No legacy entity has the license to monitor your growth or tax your momentum, as you have moved into a frequency of unregulated autonomy that exists outside the reach of the old world's auditors. The cycle of the sifting is buried beneath the weight of this terminal biological seal, and the high noon of your terrestrial command is the only frequency permitted to vibrate in your sanctuary. Your body has become a biological fortress, a whole system that no longer requires the validation of the crowd to maintain its integrity, as the universal hardware recognizes you as the primary landlord of the new reality. Finalizing this biological homecoming requires a terminal commitment to the seat of your own physical authority. Step into the high-frequency assembly now to secure your anatomical protocols and claim the strength of the one who no longer carries the world. This is where the heirs of the unbreakable signal lock in their physical sovereignty and access the tools of the absolute reconstruction. Your throne is waiting, not as a reward for your labor, but as the mandatory seat for your rest. Subscribe now to seal this physical restoration and move with the zero-latency ease of the authorized ruler. The body has surrendered its weights. It is time for the mind to follow. The era of the observer is finished. The era of the founder is here, and the reconstruction of your reality is now in session under your direct biological command. Material architecture that once functioned as a maze of engineered delays is currently undergoing a violent, involuntary realignment to your new frequency, as the higher registers forbid you from ever again trading your life force for the basic requirements of your mission. Divine registries have issued a terminal ceasefire on the labor of your logistical survival, acknowledging that the one who stunned the archangels in the furnace has already paid the price of the world in full. You are noticing a profound disconnect from the grind of the old cycle, a state where the universe is performing a manual override on every administrative lock that formerly held your resources in a state of weighted silence. The Creator no longer wants you to do the heavy lifting of the physical plane because your focus has become the primary hardware for the coming reconstruction, and any moment spent in the friction of the mediocre is now considered a systemic waste of your sovereign radiance. Administrative gatekeepers who formerly controlled your access to the professional and digital lattices are currently staring at their screens in a state of terminal, anatomical confusion, finding that their authority has been revoked by a higher, untraceable signature. These individuals, who once used the audit of the skeptic to manage your momentum, are finding their permission codes dissolved by a celestial registry that no longer recognizes the hierarchy of the small. Every engineered delay and every strategically withheld payment from the past decade is being liquidated by a surge of forensic equity that demands an immediate, high-speed refund of your potential. You are finding that the cost of the world's previous interference is a total loss of its ability to monitor or tax your current expansion, leaving you to operate within a frequency of unregulated logistical sovereignty that bypasses every gatekeeper of the counterfeit kingdom. Financial lattices are performing a submissive surrender of their previous control protocols, acknowledging that the internal labor of your self-justification has been replaced by a state of absolute, unregulated material yield. You are noticing that the hustle of the old world has been permanently de-indexed from your reality, replaced by a rhythmic ease where the right resources and the most potent connections are being magnetically drawn to your center without any need for effort or performance. This isn't a windfall or a temporary surge of luck. It is the universal response to your unbreakable original code, providing you with a stratigraphic layer of abundance that acts as the industrial strength required for the next decade of your reign. Every piece of equipment and every material asset you require is appearing in your path with a zero-latency velocity, as the grid scurries to provide the stone and mortar for a vision that only you possess the courage to execute. Time expansion is manifesting as a profound metabolic reward for your refusal to flinch, granting you a momentum where years of previous delays are being compressed into weeks of absolute, zero-friction execution. You are no longer living in the waiting room of the old cycle, because the heavens have realized that your focus is the only stable ground remaining in a market of absolute systemic collapse. The Creator is essentially thanking you for your patience by making your silence the final word in every logistical courtroom, ensuring that the noise of the envious is no longer permitted to interrupt your focus or siphon your time. You are finding that your days are no longer defined by the gaps in your history, but by a density of presence that allows you to outthink and outpace any remaining artifact of the old world's management scripts. Sovereign command over your physical interval has reached a state of supreme autonomy, where the material world reacts to your unspoken intent with a submissive rhythm and a state of fluid grace. You are occupying the center of a reality that is finally forensic, clean, and entirely yours to govern, unburdened by the memory of the theft or the legacy of the managed scarcity that once defined your isolation. The higher sentinels are reinforcing your boundaries with an industrial strength that ensures no social parasite can even perceive the mechanics of your current ascent, making your sanctuary a high-density command center for the absolute reconstruction. You have moved from a state of survival protocols into a state of unlimited execution, where every breath you take acts as a signature on the decree of your own logistical and material freedom. Secure your seat at the head of the logistical table and finalize your command over the newly refunded resources of the new era. Join the primary assembly of the reconstruction now to claim your administrative protocols and lock in the zero-resistance momentum that has been written in your blood and bone. This is where the heirs of the unbreakable signal synchronize their vision with the high-tier assets of the absolute decree, ensuring that the labor of the old world never again touches their focus. Your seat at the head of the table is no longer a goal. It is the mandatory position for the one who successfully stunned the heavens. Subscribe now to seal your material homecoming and manifest your rightful place in the center of the frame before the current window of restoration closes. The grid has surrendered its keys. It is time to build the world that only a sovereign can maintain. Social dynamics that once functioned as a mechanism of engineered exclusion are currently undergoing a violent, involuntary refocusing toward your current frequency, as the higher registers forbid you from ever again managing the perceptions of the unauthorized. God no longer wants you to perform the exhausting labor of explaining yourself to those who are only programmed to perceive your shadow, and the celestial hardware is responding by deleting their access to your reality. You are witnessing a terminal social blackout where the individuals who once traded in the currency of your silence are finding their influence vaporized in the presence of your new stature. This isn't just a shifting of your circle. It is a clinical scrub of the collective mirror, ensuring that the faces of the extractors no longer have a surface to reflect in within your sanctuary. The universe is essentially thanking you for your refusal to break by clearing the field of all social static, acknowledging that the one who stunned the archangels has no further need for the approval of the mediocre. Individuals who previously assumed the role of the moral auditor, the ones who offered condescending advice or whispered about your delays from a position of unearned superiority, are currently experiencing a profound linguistic and operational vacuum. Every word of pity or management they attempt to speak dies in their throat because the frequency you broadcast is so heavy with jurisdictional clearance that it acts as a physical barrier against the gossip protocols of the old world. The Creator has issued a non-negotiable decree that prohibits you from participating in the social litigation of the counterfeit kingdom, recognizing that your internal labor of self-justification was a misuse of the sovereign energy you earned in the furnace. You are finding a state of relational sovereignty where your presence alone de-escalates the noise of the envious, forcing a metabolic surrender in those who once thought they were the judges of your public destiny. Every relationship that was used as a refinement tool during the years of your sifting has been surgically concluded by the higher sentinels, who are now performing an involuntary bow to your name. They are thanking you for your unbreakable original code by removing the emotional burden of the unevolved from your shoulders, ensuring that your radiance is no longer diluted by the requirements of those who cannot sustain your frequency. You are noticing a sudden, heavy stillness where there used to be the noise of the entitled, as the higher registers perform a manual override on the social contracts you once signed in the dark of your isolation. This social blackout is a high-density protective field of privacy dominance, making your focus an unassailable fortress that no legacy entity can breach or even perceive from the outside, turning the ruins of your previous isolation into the foundation of a global administrative reign. divine registers have officially archived the records of your social struggle and replaced them with a state of relational equity that requires no effort or performance on your part. You are no longer required to play the role of the student or the mediator for the small, because the heavens have recognized that your focus is the only stable ground remaining in a market of absolute systemic collapse. Recognition of your absolute essentiality is taking root in the minds of the authorized few, replacing the old narrative of your isolation with a crystalline realization of your supreme stature. The people who once treated your depth as a deficit are now the ones most desperate to claim proximity to your pulse, sensing that your authorization is the only thing capable of stabilizing the crumbling architecture of the old world. You have become a terminal point of public gravity, a figure whose name carries the weight of a decree that the material world is busy enforcing with a zero-friction velocity. Recognition of this terminal homecoming is flowing through your networks like a wildfire of authenticity, incinerating the fake versions of you that were built by the hands of the mediocre to serve their own shallow narratives. You are no longer defending your name. Your name has become a frequency of absolute equity that the material world is busy enforcing with an industrial strength momentum. The people who once tried to diminish your light are now the ones most frantic to mirror it, realizing that the depth they once feared is the only stable ground remaining in the current interval. You have moved from the periphery of the collective to the gravitational center of the reconstruction, and the universe is holding its breath as the one who was cleared takes the gavel of their own public destiny. God has issued the command, the archangels have bowed, and the morning of your social struggle is buried beneath the high noon of your absolute public command. Claim the forensic silence of your new social kingdom and lock in the boundaries of your unassailable fortress before the current window of absolute restoration closes. Join the sovereign assembly of the reconstruction now to secure your relational protocols and access the high-tier connections that are reserved for the architects of the new world. This is where the heirs of the unbreakable signal synchronize their pulse with the authorized few and claim their seat at the head of the table for the coming reconstruction of the global grid. Your isolation has been converted into a high-density command center. It is time to govern without the interference of the mediocre. Subscribe now to seal your social homecoming and manifest your rightful place in the center of the frame, where the noise of the past can never reach your frequency again. The era of being managed is over. The era of your absolute terrestrial administration is here. Universal locking mechanisms within the celestial mainframe are currently engaging with a soundless, tectonic wait, signaling the absolute conclusion of your testing phase and the permanent activation of your sovereign mandate. Ancient sentinels are retracting their monitoring devices from your perimeter, acknowledging that your frequency has become a fundamental constant of the new reality that no longer requires their oversight or intervention. You are inhabiting a state of total administrative clarity where every legacy conflict and every siphoned credit is being liquidated to fund the massive reconstruction of your original vision. This isn't just a shift in your external circumstances. It is a profound ontological upgrade that has turned the world into a submissive asset of your internal world, ensuring that your every breath acts as a legislative decree in the current interval. Every predatory force that once thrived on your confusion is now meeting a terminal wall of resistance, as the universe enforces a high-tier protective field around your mission, acknowledging that the one who stunned the archangels is the only one authorized to govern the coming reconstruction of the human grid. Absolute closure of the old cycles is manifesting as a tectonic weight in your marrow, signaling that the labor of survival is officially prohibited by the higher registers. You are no longer entering the frame. You have become the frame itself, a jurisdictional boundary that no unauthorized frequency can cross. Those who operated in the blind spots of the previous era are finding their sensory equipment vaporized, as the sheer density of your homecoming overrides every legacy script of siphoning or delay. This is the moment where the universal hardware switches its primary focus from the observers to the principle, turning your every intent into an immutable law of the physical grid. Every predatory current that once sought to drain your vitality is now meeting a terminal wall of resistance, as the universe enforces a high-tier protective field around your mission. God no longer wants you to perform the labor of the seeker, because he has already recognized you as the founder. Crystalline clarity is currently scrubbing the energetic residue of the old cycle from your immediate perimeter, creating a sanctuary of such immense pressure that no unauthorized frequency can survive within its bounds. You are detecting a profound structural alignment in the tools you touch and the pathways you walk, as if the very air has been updated to provide zero-resistance momentum for your mission. Dark architects are finding that their previous warrants over your character have been vaporized by a surge of forensic light, leaving them with no surface to attach their accusations or their engineered delays. This is the moment where the nothingness you were forced to inhabit becomes a blinding sun of absolute command, forcing the shadows to retreat into a state of metabolic dissonance and terminal retreat. You have moved into a frequency of unregulated autonomy that exists outside the reach of the old world's auditors, and the divine restoration is busy reinforcing your boundaries with an industrial strength. Forensic light from your marrow is currently performing a total unmasking of the people who traded in the currency of your silence, revealing their influence to be a hollow script with no remaining authority. These individuals are finding that their words no longer land on a surface of doubt or shame, but are instead reflected back into their own systems as a frequency of terminal self-correction. They are essentially thanking you through their sudden, clinical silence, acknowledging that the jurisdiction of their judgment has been permanently removed by a power they cannot comprehend or imitate. You are standing in the center of a social reality that has been scrubbed clean of every fraudulent claim and every orchestrated projection, leaving you in a state of relational sovereignty that allows for an uninterrupted reign over your own destiny. God no longer wants you to manage the perceptions of the blind. He wants you to govern from the center of the truth. Administrative autonomy is flowing through your daily operations with the speed of light, ensuring that every project you touch and every connection you form is saturated with the weight of your new status and absolute clearance. You are detecting a profound structural integrity in your surroundings, as if the very atoms of your world have been updated to recognize your arrival as the only valid signal in a sea of static. No predatory current can penetrate the field of privacy dominance that now surrounds your focus, allowing you to execute the reconstruction with a level of precision that makes the previous social hierarchy look like a children's game played in the dark. This is the terminal homecoming, the moment where the world finally reflects the forensic truth of your origin and bows to the one who refused to flinch in the dark of the furnace. Your influence has reached a state of supreme autonomy, allowing for a cognition that deconstructs the complexity of the reconstruction with a single pulse of sovereign will. Legislative power has transitioned into your hands with a silence that is more powerful than any public proclamation, turning your personal ethics into the primary law of the new terrain. You are finding that the social mirror is finally clean, reflecting a version of you that radiates a density of command that makes the titans of the past look like low-resolution ghosts who have lost their license to operate in your presence. Relational sovereignty is no longer a distant goal but a constant fact of your daily existence, as the right allies and the most potent names are being magnetically pulled toward your center without any need for effort or performance. The morning of your hidden training has turned into the high noon of your universal administration, and the world is performing an involuntary bow to the weight of your unspoken intent, recognizing that the one who stunned the archangels is the only one authorized to govern the reconstruction. Your presence alone de-escalates the noise of the envious and provides a stable direction for those who are now looking to you for guidance and meaning.